The wrong ride. It was 2021, and I was driving for Uber full-time to make ends meet. The pandemic had hit hard, and I was stuck in between jobs, struggling to keep my head above water. Like many others, I was trying to adjust to a world where a ride-sharing job seemed like the perfect solution. The flexibility, the late-night hours, the freedom, it all sounded great. But I quickly realized that the night shift comes with more than just empty streets and quiet roads. It brings strange people, unsettling encounters, and things that you can never really explain. I didn't think much of it at first, especially when the requests started rolling in. Most of the time, it was people heading home after a night out or folks coming from bars, nothing that seemed out of the ordinary. But there was one night, one ride, that changed everything. That ride still gives me chills to this day. It was about 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The streets were empty. The usual crowd was either home or winding down, and I was getting close to calling it in night. That's when my phone pinged. Another ride request. It was from a guy named Adam. The pickup was near an old part of town, a block away from a factory that had been abandoned for years. I thought that was odd. I hadn't had a ride in that area in a while, and I didn't even realize people still lived around there. When I arrived, it wasn't like the typical Uber stop. There was no crowd of people waiting for a ride. It was quiet, too quiet. The street was narrow, dimly lit, with barely any cars parked along it. I was starting to feel that familiar unease you get when you're in a place that doesn't quite feel right. There, standing in front of an old corner store, was a man. He was tall, around 6 feet or so, and he had a hoodie pulled over his head. His jeans were faded, and he looked like he hadn't been sleeping well. He didn't seem like the usual drunk college kid or late-night worker you'd expect at this hour. He just seemed off. The way he stood there, hands in his pockets, staring down at the cracked sidewalk, gave off this eerie vibe. I rolled down the window and called out, "Adam?" He didn't respond right away, just nodded slowly, as if to confirm. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just moved toward the car and got in, sliding into the back seat without saying a word. There was something about his silence that sent a shiver down my spine. I tried to break the ice. "Is the address in the app right?" I asked. "Everything good?" He mumbled, "Yeah, it's fine," in a tone so flat it didn't even feel like he was really talking to me. I glanced back in the rearview mirror, but his eyes were locked straight ahead. Not at the window, not at his phone, just blank. I thought maybe he was tired. Maybe he'd had a rough night. Well, whatever it was, it made the silence feel heavier. I turned the corner, heading toward his destination, which according to the app was about 20 minutes away in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The road was empty, and as we drove, I started to feel that growing sense of discomfort. Every few minutes, I'd glance back at him in the mirror, only to find him staring straight at the back of my head. He didn't blink, didn't shift his gaze. It was like he wasn't even really there. I decided to try and make small talk again. "Rough night?" I asked, keeping my voice light. His response came after a long pause. "You could say that," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I tried not to make too much of it. Maybe he had just had a bad day or a tough conversation. But as the minutes ticked by, the unease in the car grew. We were heading deeper into unfamiliar territory now, a part of town I rarely ventured into. The streetlights were sparse, and the houses were set far apart, hidden behind trees and overgrown yards. About 15 minutes into the drive, the man suddenly leaned forward, his face now inches from the back of my head. "Turn here," he whispered, his voice sending a cold chill down my spine. I turned the steering wheel without thinking. The street was barely lit, with only a few street lamps illuminating the cracked pavement. But then, just as quickly as he had spoken, he pointed to a driveway on the right. "Pull in," he said in that same eerie, monotone voice. I hesitated. The house in front of us was old, run down. There were no lights on inside or outside. The lawn was overgrown and the siding was peeling. The whole place had a look of abandonment to it. There was no car in the driveway either, which made it even stranger. I glanced back at him, looking for some kind of explanation, but he just stared ahead, unblinking. "Is this your place?" I asked, trying to sound casual, though I could feel my heart rate picking up. He didn't answer immediately. For a moment, it felt like he wasn't going to say anything at all. Then he simply said, "Just pull in." My gut told me I shouldn't, but I couldn't bring myself to argue. I turned the car into the driveway and parked in front of the dark house. I looked back at him, hoping for some kind of clarification. "Everything all right?" I asked. He didn't respond. He just stared at the house. Then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it, he said, "Wait here." He opened the door and stepped out of the car, disappearing into the darkness. I sat there, watching him walk toward the house. My mind raced. Was I supposed to drive off? Was he coming back? And why was this whole situation feeling so wrong? The ride wasn't over, and I didn't want to cancel. I knew Uber had rules about that, but something in my gut told me I wasn't supposed to be here. I waited for what felt like forever. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, I decided I'd had enough. I manually ended the ride in the app, deciding that whatever this was, it wasn't worth sticking around for. Just as I shifted the car into reverse, I saw him. He was walking back toward me, fast, his hands empty, and this strange look on his face, half angry, half excited. His eyes weren't wide, but there was something unsettling in them, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I unlocked the doors, not wanting to get into a confrontation, but my instinct screamed at me not to let him back in. He opened the door, slid into the back seat, and immediately said, "Take me to the other place." "Other place?" I repeated, unsure of what he meant. "Just drive," he said flatly, without offering any further explanation. I paused, still feeling the weight of the situation. "You need to put it in the app," I told him. He didn't respond. He just stared at the back of my head in the mirror. I tried again. "I can't take you anywhere unless you put it in the app." Still no answer. Just that cold, unsettling silence. Finally, he spoke again. "Take me back to where you picked me up." I didn't want to argue. I just started the car and began driving back toward the strip mall where I had originally picked him up. The whole way there, it felt like something was crawling under my skin. I could feel his eyes on me, even though he wasn't saying a word. The tension in the car was unbearable. At one point, I tried to lighten the mood. "Rough night?" I asked again, hoping for some kind of response. "You could say that," he answered again, his voice still lifeless. "Is everything all right?" I asked, my voice tinged with genuine concern. "Not yet," he said, with no emotion, as if he was speaking more to himself than to me. I didn't ask anything more. When we got back to the strip mall, I parked under the same dim light where I had picked him up. Before I could even speak, he leaned forward, his voice low. "You ever wonder how you're going to die?" he asked, his tone almost like a dare. I froze. I didn't know how to respond. I laughed awkwardly, trying to brush it off. "Not really something I think about." He didn't laugh. There was no smile, just a cold, emotionless stare. "I think about it all the time," he said softly. He opened the door, stepped out, and walked away, disappearing into the darkness behind the bowling alley. I sat there, too shaken to move. What had just happened? What did he mean? I still don't know. Eventually, I drove home, but I couldn't stop checking the mirrors. Every shadow seemed like it was hiding something. Every streetlight felt like it was trying to tell me something. When I got home, I looked at the trip details again. And that's when it hit me. The name had changed. The ride, which had originally been listed under Adam, now had no name at all. No profile, no picture, nothing. It was like the whole trip never happened. I contacted Uber support immediately, but they told me the trip data was unavailable. They said sometimes it happens if the app crashes or if a rider cancels midway. But I know what I saw. I know the man got in and out of my car. I know he said what he said. "You picked the wrong guy up tonight." I've never seen him again, and I hope I never do. But every time I get a ping in a dimly lit parking lot or have a silent passenger in the back seat, I remember that night. And I still wonder if maybe, just maybe, he changed his mind at the last second. Or maybe he was never planning to do anything. Maybe he just wanted to scare someone. But I'll never forget the way he looked at me. And I'll never forget his words. "You picked the wrong guy up tonight."